Welcome, everyone, to the Pick Six Podcast, where we discuss the best stories in college football. I'm your host, Chris Chang, and as a reminder, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps us out here at the Pick Six channel. I've noticed a lot of you guys who are watching these videos aren't subscribed. Please, it would really help us if you could do that. Also, send us your story ideas to the pick6guys@gmail.com. We want to know, what do you guys want to see and hear us talk about? Okay, guys, we're just going to jump right into the first rankings for the college football playoffs. They are out. It's the first week, and we all have to temper our expectations. This is going to completely change in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That is my opinion. We've got some great games up, but I think the committee wants to see how some of these teams fare out moving forward. For us UM fans, it kind of panned out almost pretty much exactly how we expected. We were ranked number 18 in the AP poll. And if you go even further, the top 20 were pretty much all in the same places as the AP poll and the college football players, minus a few teams here and there. Very, very little surprises. Next, we knew that they would rank Notre Dame ahead of us and screw the ACC in favor of the Big Ten and the SEC. You know, when Heather Dinich, released that article just the day before, 48 hours before the rankings were released, please don't get it twisted. Here's a little insider tip. That was basically the committee telling you this is what's going to happen, and we're just trying to ease that punch as it comes, so when it's delivered, it doesn't hit as hard. So if you see that moving forward, if you see Heather Dinich or someone else at a major outlet kind of reporting something, it's probably most likely what's going to happen. Now, I mentioned the issues with preseason rankings earlier this year and even last year. And while we have a different top 10 than the one in the preseason, the number of representatives didn't change. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. So in the preseason, the SEC had 4 top 10 teams. In week 1 of the CFP rankings, 4 teams again. In the Big Ten preseason, they had 3 top 10 teams. This week, 3 teams. Are you seeing the pattern that's developing here? The ACC preseason only had 2 teams, 0 this week. And now the Big 12 had 0 in their top 10 preseason. Guess what? They took those ACC spots with 2 teams in their top 10. And finally, we all know they ranked Notre Dame in the top 10 despite having 2 losses, but that's low-hanging fruit. So I will absolutely keep moving on. There is a ton of arguments of how the CFP is trying to destroy the ACC, and I would push back and say maybe that's not exactly what they're trying to do, but it's more of a consequence, right? It's kind of like the collateral damage to ranking a lot of these SEC and Big Ten teams as high as they are. Again, if you front load the beginning of the ranking schedule up, it makes it easier towards the end of the year to have an excuse to put all these teams in there. Now, the committee is favoring the Big Ten and the ACC. As a result, the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the ACC will have to fight for the scraps moving forward. The ACC honestly isn't doing itself any favors, to be real with you guys. They're either laying eggs in crucial moments with out of conference schedules and play, or they're cannibalizing themselves and not freaking holding their referees accountable like we saw this past weekend. But we're moving on. Again, we're talking about Syracuse in a few minutes. If the ACC wants to survive, it honestly needs to have a cold, hard look in the mirror and figure out, what does it want to be? Does it want to be a basketball conference or a football conference? And if it wants to be a football conference, it's really going to need to reallocate its resources to those football programs, push their boosters, push their collectives to give more money, because we're seeing it in real time, folks. You're seeing it. The ACC is getting pushed out. I think there's some really good ACC teams. Granted, are they all on par with SEC and Big Ten teams? No, but I think it's a little bit different than what we've seen in years past, where the SEC and the Big Ten maybe were very dominant on the top side, a little bit more even killed throughout the whole thing. And I think some of these top ACC teams could actually compete with a lot of these Big 12 teams, Big 10 teams moving forward. But again, this is the first batch of rankings. We've got 3 more left at least, or maybe 4. And I think they're going to change a lot, because there's a lot of football, which we're going to talk about later in this episode, still ahead of us, and a lot of key matchups in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But speaking of cannibalizing and laying eggs, we've got our number 18 Miami Hurricanes welcoming the Syracuse Orange. We got to talk about this week's game, guys. Miami taking on the Orange in what some are calling a revenge game. Not sure you can technically call it a revenge game, considering the fact that the Syracuse Orange are abysmal and nowhere near as competitive as they were last year. I mean, this team, I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's going on at Syracuse, but the team we're playing this week sent out a freshman walk-on who goes to Syracuse for another sport. Just saying. Some of the things we're going to want to pay attention to this week. Miami will be without some key playmakers on the offense. Running back Mark Fletcher will be out. Wide receiver CJ Daniels is still questionable, and new to the out list will be Tony Johnson. That was announced last night. On the defensive side of the ball, we've got D tackle Ahmad Moten Sr., who will be out. Cornerback OJ Federico will also be out, and linebacker Wesley Besaint is questionable. We can look at this in one of two ways, right? We can look at this as, oh my God, what's going to happen? Not really when it's Syracuse. Maybe if this was the NC State game, we would have that problem. But I think this is a great opportunity for us to showcase some of our young or unused talent that hasn't seen a lot of playing time so far this season, or minimal playing time. Again, I've alluded to it. Syracuse is bad, but like bad. They rank 116th in points a game, number 96 in yards a game, 124th in third down conversions, 124th in yards a rush, 105th in yards a pass, and 122nd in giveaways. Guys, this should be a bloodbath. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but their lacrosse QB, yeah, remember I was talking about their quarterback who they trotted on the field last week, who played another sport. He's a lacrosse player, right? Went 4 for 18 last week for 39 yards. Not in a quarter, not in a half, in the entire game. They were only able to rush for 113 yards, and I'm not sure who they are trotting out this week, but I think we're going to probably be good, even with the guys that we have out. Now, we should win big. Again, I want to see us win big. I'd like to see this something like the Stanford game, but like to the nth degree, maybe kind of what we were hoping to do against Stanford, to do it in Stanford. My hope is that if Emory Williams or Luke Nickel are not out there by the mid third quarter, I will be very disappointed. I mean, I think these two guys should be seeing some. So again, ideally, you'd like to see midway or maybe just after the start of the third quarter, Emory Williams get in for a good quarter and a half, maybe midway through the fourth quarter, drop Luke Nickel in, get him some reps. That would be ideal. Go win big. Please give me another hit of that cane crack that we need for the NC State game, which will be our first challenge since our loss. I am picking Miami 48, at least 48-3. Now, Miami's shot of making the playoffs are very slim and will require a lot of help. Now, while I believe personally Miami is almost mathematically eliminated, maybe we can stretch the borders of our imagination and keep some interest in the rest of this season by playing a bunch of what ifs. Let's do that for the next few weeks. Instead of previewing the games, let's look at the games that matter to us the most. Now, I know a lot of these games, the favorites are favored by a lot or by at least a full score. But if you believe Miami can still make the playoffs, we have to believe that upsets start this week. So let's look at this week's games. There are teams ahead of us playing a potential challenge. Now, I'm not including, if you look on the graphic over here, I'm not including the Ole Miss versus Citadel. That's not going to be a challenge. I'm not including Ohio State's game. Guys, those are going to probably be guaranteed wins. But I do feel like there are some potential challenges in Texas A&M playing Missouri. I think number 4, Alabama welcoming LSU will always be a good fight. And we'll be maybe discussing that in a little bit. Number 7, BYU at number 8, Texas Tech. We're going to take a minute to talk about this game because I think this is really important, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. We got number 9, Oregon at number 20, Iowa. The last challenge on their schedule probably for the remainder of the season. We've got number 14, Virginia, who is just surviving an OT, taking on Wake Forest. Number 15, Louisville plays Cal, who, yeah, they're a bad team, but deceptively good at times. Number 16, Vanderbilt will be taking on Auburn in an SEC matchup. And then we've got 4 teams ahead of us that have bye weeks. That would be Texas, Oklahoma, and Utah, and Georgia Tech. So let's look into some games that matter. First, we're going to talk about Texas A&M. Number 3, Texas A&M taking on number 22, Missouri. You're probably wondering, they're number 3. They're undefeated, Chris. Why do I care? This is one you want to keep an eye on, even though A&M is almost certain to win out and win this game, because should the upset occur, it could be one of 2 losses the Aggies could sustain before the SEC championship, should they make it. A&M has Texas in a few weeks, and 2 losses would make things very interesting in that SEC race. Now, remember, if we want in, the SEC needs to cannibalize itself, and it would need to start this week. Now, I say this with trepidation because I honestly don't see the CFP committee putting in 5 SEC teams. Currently, you have A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss as favorites to get in. But should Texas A&M lose this week or to Texas, you would have either A&M or Texas as ones being left out. Keep an eye on that. Guys, the next game I think you guys should all be looking at, number 4, Alabama versus LSU. Now, it's almost got the exact same stipulations. Bama is a heavy favorite. A lot of their strengths play against LSU's weaknesses, and it will be very interesting to see how LSU comes out in their first game without Brian Kelly. Again, sometimes these teams, they lose a coach, they play for each other, they get that boost, right? Bama still has Oklahoma, who they lost to last year, and Auburn, and they will probably be favorites in both of those games, but a slip up this week or in either of those games could put them out or on the edge of the playoffs because they have that week 1 loss to FSU, guys. Keep that in mind. It could come back to bite them in the butt later on. Next, I had highlighted that number 7 BYU at number 8 Texas Tech. This is huge, specifically for ACC teams. Why? Because we know we're going to get a boatload of SEC teams. We know we're going to get a boatload of Big Ten teams. But the Big 12 and the ACC are going to be jockeying for those 2 spots. And most likely one of those 2 conferences, everyone's believing it's the ACC. Hopefully in these next few weeks, I can kind of give you an idea of how the ACC gets 2 teams in. But a lot of people believe one of these 2 teams will be a 1 bid league, basically, right? So we're looking at the biggest matchup in the Big 12 this week. We got BYU at Texas Tech. If you're a fan, like I said, this is the one you want to watch. Now, while BYU is still undefeated, neither team can afford a loss if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. This is the second part in a trilogy for BYU's Big 12 championship hopes. They got past arch rival Utah a few weeks ago and now face Texas Tech and have Cincinnati in a few weeks, making this a must-win game. If they really want to get to the Big 12 championship, they've got to win this week. Now, Byron Morton and the Red Raiders have their own saga continuing after a heartbreaking loss to ASU, and they have their own dreams of getting to the Big 12 championship. They need to win this game as it's their final hurdle into getting to Dallas. From here on out, for the Red Raiders, it is manageable city. It should be on cruise control for them. But again, we know as fans, cruise control doesn't always work. A loss would mean they would probably fall to about 15 or 18 because the teams that are behind them either are all favorites in their games or, like we discussed with Texas, Oklahoma, Utah, and Georgia Tech, all have bye weeks, right? So a loss in this game is going to plummet those teams, right? Like I said, you're looking at 15 or 18, which would allow us to either move up at least 1 or 2 spots should one of them lose. BYU's defensive line struggles without blitzes, which will help in the rankings where they're, I think, are roughly around the 60s, whereas Tech has a top 10 O-line in pass blocking. Again, this battle in the trenches is going to be super crucial in this game. Also, I don't trust a true freshman on the road for BYU. BYU's offense will be running into a buzzsaw that is Texas Tech's top 5 D line, that $7 million D line that we've seen reports about this week that they paid for. Now, with a loss, we could see BYU take a tumble, maybe not below us because they're a little bit ranked and they're undefeated and will only have 1 loss, but a necessary fall for us to rise in the coming weeks. Again, we don't want to look at each week as a determining factor. We want to look at each week building upon the next to help us rise in the rankings. Next, we've got number 9 Oregon at number 20 Iowa. Okay, listen, this Big Ten battle that seems very one-sided, but a loss could be beneficial for Miami, in my opinion. For Oregon, this will be potentially their last road challenge. They have Washington technically as their last game at the end of the year, but Washington really hasn't beaten anyone. So again, this Iowa team will probably be their last challenge. Oregon hasn't beaten a team, however, with a winning record right now, except for Northwestern, who is 5-3. Go figure, right? Northwestern, only team on Oregon's schedule who has a winning record. So a loss to Iowa would see them plummet as far as BYU, if not further, in my opinion, who we just spoke about. I will be giving their best punch because with the win, they would become a dark horse for the playoffs with a very manageable schedule moving forward. Again, teams that are ranked ahead of us, not all of them have favorable schedules, but teams behind us do. So that's where my math kind of said, listen, we went out, but the teams that we need to lose, the teams that beat them could end up jumping us. Because I think an Iowa win over Oregon might not spell that great, but we don't know what the committee is going to do. But what we do know is we need teams that are ahead of us to lose. So Iowa also has the best O line in the country and a QB who likes to run the ball and already has 11 touchdowns with his feet so far. And they also have a fierce running back duo who are averaging roughly 6 yards a carry. It's pretty good. Iowa's defense has the third best run defense, and maybe they can force Dante Moore to throw more and rely on him on the road, which again, I never like that. New quarterbacks on the road, never really a good thing. Not to mention, we saw that Dante Moore is kind of interception prone when he plays against a zone defense, which is what Iowa likes to play. Now, the key is Iowa running the ball and winning the time of possession. Iowa, they're a ground and pound. They're your old school corn fed Midwestern team. They need to stick to that. If it's a low scoring game, maybe Iowa can come out with the win. These next 3 games I'm going to go into, when you look at them on paper, you're like, why are you even covering them? But again, these teams, besides Georgia Tech, are all directly in front of us. How they play versus how we play could allow us to jump. If they play bad, we play good. They lose, we win. Again, things change. So these are the teams and these are the games that will drastically impact Miami's position in the rankings. And I think, like I said, moving forward, should we get a little help, can help us get into the playoffs. We're going to start off first with number 14, Virginia, first Wake Forest. Virginia at this point feels like they've played more time in OT than regulation at this point. I think they're overdue for a loss. The last 5 games, they've only won by 1 score, and 3 of those 5 wins were in overtime. Wake Forest has played some talented teams and played better against those talented teams than expected, and even came out as winners against teams like SMU. So it's not like this team doesn't have a win in them or doesn't have the capability of winning. Now, if Wake can get the pressure that they need, that they got against SMU and Jennings, I think we could see an upset brewing. Virginia's O-line isn't the strongest in pass coverage, ranking 69th. In all their wins, pass rush grades were off the charts. In their losses, however, Wake Forest did not do so well. Now, granted, Wake Forest did play some mobile quarterbacks in CJ Bailey, Thomas Castellanos, and Haynes King. So you can kind of see why they probably didn't get that much pressure. Now, the questions are, can Chandler Morris for Virginia make moves with his feet? Can he get out of the pocket? Can he extend plays to get his wide receivers open? Next, can Wake Forest muster some offensive drives that they've seemed to stall? Wake Forest has a terrible offense. We spent a lot of time on the defense looking at this game. Wake Forest is really, really going to need to get their offense together and realistically find a quarterback. So I think that will be the determining factor. We need Wake Forest to beat Virginia. We need Virginia to take a look. Now, next game we're looking at, number 15, Louisville versus Cal. Again, on paper, you're looking at this easy blowout win. Everyone's picking Louisville to win. Why? Cal is bad, but not bad as you think they are. Their most recent play, they've had a slow start against a ranked Virginia, but kept up with them most of the game. Then the week before that, they flew across the country and took on Virginia Tech and took them to overtime. So it's not like they're getting completely blown out, right? They have a great QB behind center, and that I think will give them a puncher's chance. Now, I don't see how they would do it, but maybe Louisville comes out a little bit flat because they see a wounded and weak team. They see that everything's in favor of them. They've got a couple teams in the next few weeks that they could be looking ahead of, in back-to-back challenges. I believe in Clemson and Duke. So maybe Louisville comes out flat. They get caught looking ahead, and maybe Cal can squeak out a win, or at the least play them close, make them look bad. We look good against Syracuse. We can see where it goes. I do understand. Yes, they have the tiebreaker. They have the win above us. It'll be hard to jump them. Next, the last game we're going to look at this week, number 16, Vanderbilt versus Auburn. Now, I know, listen, Vandy is having a super hot year, especially by their standards. This is a really great year for them. And they realistically only have Tennessee left as a challenge to worry about moving forward. But that is what intrigues me. And especially with it being in the SEC, like we talked about earlier, an upset is just around the corner for any team drinking their own Kool-Aid and looking ahead. Auburn's got a great run defense, and Vandy loves to ground and pound and rely on Diego Pavia's feet. So, again, great matchup that could fall in favor for Auburn. Auburn, however, will need to get their speedsters on the outside open and create some explosive plays with Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman, who have honestly not lived up to the hype. I mean, realistically, Auburn's going to have to do something they haven't done. But again, we've seen this year, we as UM fans have seen crazier things happen. So These are the scenario. That's the scenario that we face this week, Canes. What do you think? Do you think any of these things that I'm talking about are possible? Are you one of those people who sees these upsets happening and crucial? I should actually highlight upsets happening. Or are you more like me? Do you believe that hey, we're kind of out of this? It ain't happening. We're probably just going to be in a Pop Tart bowl or Tax Slayer bowl, whatever it is. Or finally, do you believe? Maybe I haven't highlighted. Drop it in the comments. What is your road to the playoffs for Miami? How do we get in? This is just something that I'm looking at on a week-to-week basis. I kind of want to engage. I want to engage in it just merely because what am I going to do? Just say the year's over and not do anything more? No, we got to be positive. We got to back this team up. And then, like I said, we do our part. Hopefully, will do its part. Well, guys, we got another one in the books. Thank you all for watching. We will have a recap Sunday night, hopefully, for the Syracuse game. I'm hoping big, big, big blowout, please, in Jesus' name. Thank you all for watching. Until next week, be good, y'all. Win the weekend. And as always, go Canes.